Jammu and Kashmir is going to be voting in 3 phases: September 18th, September 25th, and October 1st. The shortest since 1996, a change that has been welcomed across party lines. But also, as the results that will be announced on 4th October may possibly be a step closer to a demand that has been growing politically as well as among people in general, demand for restoration of statehood. Or will it? We will look into this as well, particularly because these assembly elections are going to be a first since the abrogation of Article 370, but also first since the delimitation exercise in 2022. It's the first assembly polls in 10 years. There's been no government or chief minister since PDP-BJP coalition government collapsed in 2018, and no assembly for the last 5 years. It was in December 2023 that the Supreme Court set September 30th as a deadline for assembly polls. But this also comes at a time when terror attacks have been on the rise. In just the last 2.5 months, look at the number of terror attacks, increasing in Jammu particularly now. It's had experts speak about a possible shift in terror attacks from Kashmir to Jammu. August 14th, army captain killed in Doda. A terrorist is subsequently gunned down. July 15th, 5 army jawans are killed in Doda. July 8th, a military convoy was attacked and 5 army personnel were killed in Kathua. On June 26th in Doda, 3 terrorists were killed in a forest. CRPF Jawan was killed, 5 soldiers and a cop were injured. On June 9th, in Riyasi, 9 pilgrims were killed, 42 injured in a bus attack. Remember, this came just an hour before Prime Minister Modi was to take his oath. In fact, Ministry of Home Affairs response in Lok Sabha raises some important points. Look at the terror-related data. 2024, in just the first 7 months, there have been 11 terror-related incidents, 24 encounters and terror operations. 14 security personnel have been killed and 14 civilians have been killed. Compare this to the whole of 2023, where you had 46 terror-related incidents, more than double. 48 encounters or counter-terror operations. 30 security personnel were killed and 14 civilians killed. Matter of just 1.5 years. But amid these challenges, democracy is winning. These elections will not be the first since abrogation of Article 370. In fact, it's the first assembly elections. The parliamentary, the Lok Sabha elections were held earlier. That was the first. It was, at that time, an all-time high voter turnout in Baramulla constituency at 59%. Srinagar saw the highest voter turnout in 2 decades with 37.99%. In fact, Jammu and Kashmir have chosen ballot over bullet several times. And who better to put this in perspective for us than S.Y. Qureshi, the former Chief Election Commission of India. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Thank you very much. My first question, with the first assembly election since the abrogation of Article 370, even since 2014, and of course amid the increase in terror attacks, with these election dates announced, what's really the challenge? What's before the Election Commission at this point?
Well, elections everywhere are complicated, and every state has its own slightly different ground reality. In Kashmir, it is, of course, law and order, militancy, and Election Commission looks at that. They've been there. They've talked to the political parties, talked to officers, the army, the security forces. and has come to the conclusion that the time is ripe for the election, which were in any case were due. And the good thing, the significant thing is that they have shortened normally there used to be 7 phases, they have shortened it to 3 phases, which is a very good thing. And I've been lately saying that longer elections are proving to be counterproductive. They have served their purpose at a time when law and order was the main issue, and every political party demanded that we bring in paramilitary forces, which is a term for uh, Central Armed Police Forces. I think it is an excellent thing because a prolonged election also creates a space for more mischief. Because, between phases, while our forces take 4 or 5 days to move, the gundas and the criminals move in 5 6 hours in their swanky cars. So, therefore, it is better to finish early, quick early.
Could this assembly voting be the finale before the reinstatement of the statehood, which of course is a growing demand as well?
Yeah, certainly. But let me first clarify, they are not the first election, because don't forget that only 2 3 months ago there were Lok Sabha elections. Because the real
No,
test of
assembly elections.
yeah,
Yes.
assembly elections, but the political mood of the state was assessed in the Lok Sabha election. They voted, they came out in large numbers, voting was very peaceful, and they voted their MPs. So that was the first test, and this is the first state assembly election, and of course it's a UT. And but the fact that the Prime Minister has showed it many times. Supreme Court had directed that the statehood should be restored quickly, urgently. Although I would have preferred in the judgment that they should have restored it that day and asked for the election in due course as they have done, because that requires preparation. So, but anyway, better late than never. So, I think just after the election, statehood will be restored, and that will be the greatest balm on in a troubled state.
Mr. Qureshi, this election is also happening with a very turbulent, troubled neighborhood around India, particularly Pakistan. How is this to be looked at?
Well, and of course, Pakistan as an irritant, sending militants, and that has been going on for the last 30 years. And first thing Election Commission does, as these guys must have done already, that they meet the GOC, they meet the army commanders and tell them, "Okay, look, your job is to guard the borders." These are a very important thing, because the whole world watches Indian elections, particularly Kashmir election. So, and all eyes will be on this, but I'm very sure our experience has been very positive. In fact, I mentioned 2008. And let me tell you that we were expecting dream election when suddenly Amarnath Yatra was attacked. And situation turned dramatically overnight, and so drastically that there was total polarization between Srinagar and Jammu, the Kashmir and Jammu, Hindus and Muslims. And in such a situation, we had a dilemma whether to conduct election or not. When we went to the valley and Jammu, in the valley, all these leaders, the big names that we have, they all came and told us that please don't hold the election. People are throwing stones at us. That was the time. We were in two minds whether to postpone the election. Now, and that was the time, let me share with you, that the election commission's opinion got divided. One opinion was that while leaders themselves are wanting postponement, how can we conduct elections? The other view was, to which I was a contributory. I think, look, if we postpone the election, we are playing into the hands of the militants. What is the guarantee that after 4 months, situation will not get worse? Nobody can guarantee that. Therefore, they want election postponed or cancelled, and you are falling into their hands. The biggest answer, the best answer is to conduct elections. And God favors the brave, as they say. We went and conducted the election. And unfortunately, interestingly, you may or may not remember, There was an incident 4 days before the election in one constituency. There were 4 rapes. And then the militants said, anybody who comes and vote will cut their fingers. And we thought there will be zero turnout. About 60% turnout. Remarkable turnout. And even the militants themselves commented, look, we were wanting a total boycott. And here is that people, where have they come from? They came from somewhere. So, and we turned the tide completely. So, because, people want outlet for their problems and grievances. They need an MLA. They need MPs. So, which is why the elected government is the requirement of the people. And that's the best way to restore democracy.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Qureshi, for joining us, for putting things in perspective, and of course, for sharing your experiences as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm also being joined at this point by R.S. Pathania, who represents the BJP, Zishan Rana, who is with the NC, as well as SP Vaid, who is a former Jammu and Kashmir DGP. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. SP Vaid, if I can come to you, what do you see as the immediate challenge as the election dates have really been announced? Something that's been waited for a very long time. People have been demanding this. They have been wanting to vote. We've had the Lok Sabha elections that were very successfully conducted. Well, there's no doubt that this would also be conducted very successfully. But there are some very grave challenges as well.
Good evening, Sneha. Thank you for having me. First of all, this announcement has gone down very well. Every political party and every citizen of the state has welcomed it. You can't keep people indefinitely at the mercy of bureaucracy. Ultimately, that is the beauty of democracy. People need their public representatives like MLAs and ministers for small issues they have in their life. And it's very difficult for them to approach secretaries or go to secretariat. And so it has been welcomed after now long gap of 6 years. This election would be holding, I think, after 10 years. Now, the terrorism actually breeds because of fear factor. And the way there was a turnout in parliament election, that has rattled Pakistan. Once the fear factor goes, the terrorism, that is the death knell of terrorism. And you saw how big queues and old and women lining up for the parliament election. They were, I think, percentage was record for last 35 years, after 87, 88. Around 60% polling, like any other normal state of the country. I think that had rattled Pakistan. That's why you are seeing spurt of terrorist incidents in Jammu region. That remains a concern, and I think, Election Commission had visited Jammu and Kashmir. They discussed arrangements with all those who are concerned with state administration and the security forces and intelligence agencies. I'm sure our SOP is very well laid. We had conducted elections even at those times when things were so difficult, like 96. The first assembly election was conducted in 96. And 95, the parliament election, after all hell broke down in Kashmir in the 90s. And even in 2002, if you see the terrorism graph of last 35 years, I think 2001 and 2002 are the peak years of violence. Even in 2002, the successfully government conducted elections, and I'm sure, I'm very confident this time also we'll go through this. But we have to take a lot of precautions in Jammu region. That's very, very important.
Right. Zishan Rana, a welcome decision?
It's a welcome step, and we all have been waiting for this day. I think we all know that it's been 10 years that Jammu and Kashmir remained without elections, without assembly elections, and it's been 6 years of Jammu and Kashmir is without an assembly. So all of us were waiting anxiously for this day, and we welcome the decision taken by the Election Commission. And we were hopeful that the Supreme Court had already given a verdict that the elections had to be conducted before 30th of September, and we knew that the Election Commission will have to take a call before 30th of September. So it's a welcome step, and it will further strengthen the democracy in Jammu and Kashmir, because we know that without assembly, without people's representative, it would have been difficult to run this union territory for a longer period. And whereas I say that I don't want to politicize on any issue today, because it's a day for celebration for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because we have suffered, people of Jammu and Kashmir have been deprived of their rights, and this is a day to celebrate and exercise their franchise, and let us have their own government, and hopefully that the government of India will realize that the decision taken on 5th of August 2019 was miserable, because when you talk about terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, it has been proven that terrorism has had no links with Article 370. So all of that is going in our minds, and I'm hopeful that the people of Jammu and Kashmir will repose faith in Jammu and Kashmir National Conference, and inshallah ta'ala we will have our government on 4th of October.
Aris Patania?
Yes. Please, madam.
It was said in Parliament itself that there's almost a drastic decrease in the number of terrorism since the abrogation of Article 370. And then
Absolutely.
you have the reality of repeated attacks over the last few months.
Yes.
Does this bring in a concern? The opposition is saying, it's not really the opposition, because there is no government as such in J&K. There is no state government. It's governed by the LG. Nonetheless, the political parties are saying that there's been no connection between the abrogation of Article 370 and terrorism.
Sneha, to be very plain and very pragmatic, Jammu and Kashmir is at a very, very defining moment, particularly after 5th of August 2019. An increased investment in public and private sector, increased tempo of development, a bigger tirade against corruption, big administrative reforms, and above all, let me hit the right nail on the head, an increased sense of security in Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. You see, the security scenario has virtually metamorphosed in Jammu and Kashmir, although the incidents you were quoting at the start of the show, they stand as a big challenge. They are a challenge. They are rather a gauntlet for the security forces, for the establishment, for the Jammu and Kashmir administration, and particularly they are manifestation of an frustration brewing with regard to the feel-good factors created by the Herculean and the unprecedented reforms unleashed by Bharat Sarkar with regard to Jammu and Kashmir, one part. Secondly, with regard to assembly election in Jammu and Kashmir, we have been very clear and very categoric. First of all, we want to thank the Election Commission of India. Post 5th of August 2019, there was a comprehensive delimitation, and that even completed in a record period of time. Then that report accepted, then went for discussion in the parliament too. Thereafter, a detailed voter revision, because there was relocation of polling booths also. And now, ultimately, the delay, the so-called delay, and the so attributed to as the delay, there was no delay at all. So these are the processes which had to be done after a delimitation.
Mr. Patania, while you mentioned that, it's interesting, and of course, Election Commission, you've thanked the Election Commission, just 1 minute.
Absolutely.
But would you, let's also remember the fact that this has been announced at this time because there was a deadline by the court itself, by the Supreme Court itself, that the elections have to be conducted.
Sneha, let me clarify. This is a very beautiful question, and let me put it in the right perspective. You see, this was not a in legal language we call it as it's a direction per incurium. This is admitted by concession, because this is not that Supreme Court mandated us to say like this. On day one, the CGI said to Bharat Sarkar, when will you conduct elections? We reported to Bharat Sarkar that we will conduct elections in 2024 itself. So on a statement made by the Solicitor General on the floor of the Honorable Supreme Court. So there was a direction, and our stand also. I represented the Bharatiya Janata Party before the
Zishan
Election
Rana,
Commission
do
Chief
you
in
agree
Srinagar,
with what
and
R.S.
our stand was
Pathania is
very
saying?
clear.
In fact, before I go to Zishan Rana,
Please.
sorry,
Please.
let's also see, I think we have some voices from Jammu and Kashmir as well. Let's just listen into what they have. I think my team will just put it together. Zishan Rana, do you agree to what R.S. Pathania is saying? I think you've muted yourself. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. I said that what Mr. Pathania is saying is completely irrelevant because we all know that the Supreme Court had given a day, and it had categorically said that you have to hold elections before 30th of September 2024. So we knew that the Election Commission will come to Jammu and Kashmir, will have its review meeting in Jammu and Kashmir, and then we will decide about the dates of election. So it is. We all know that it is a prerogative of the Home Ministry also because they have to give security clearance. But we knew that the verdict given by the Supreme Court, the onus was on the Election Commission of India to hold elections. So now they cannot take credit for it. Earlier they used to say that it is not our domain to decide about the future of Jammu and Kashmir and the election about the election of Jammu and Kashmir. Now they say that they want to take credit for holding election in Jammu and Kashmir. That is unfair.
SP Vaid, if I can just come to you, is there a sense of a greater stability and security currently in Jammu and Kashmir when you contrast it to a decade ago? It's been a decade since the last assembly elections were held. It's been almost 6 years since there's been no assembly at all in Jammu and Kashmir, which is a very big deal. On the ground, as a police official, as a top official who served in Jammu and Kashmir, do you see a change in how the situation is currently, of how terror attacks are taking place?
See, if you compare it with what was 2016, post Burhan Wani, things have drastically changed. But if you 2014 when elections happened, I think that time situation was quite comfortable. And here, after abrogation of Article 370 and Operation All Out, in Kashmir Valley, things had completely transformed. There's no doubt. In fact, the results are on down to see. But the worrying factor is how Pakistan actually brought a spurt in terror incidents in Jammu region and was able to successfully infiltrate some of the very well trained jungle warfare, mountain warfare trained, Afghan trained terrorists with American weapons. And that has actually made Jammu region really a point of worry. But I think special precautions will have to be taken that candidates are protected, the voters are protected, and their routes they are taking is properly covered by ROP. I think those steps will have to be taken. And most of the areas where polling will take are inhabited areas, and these terrorists are actually taking shelter in jungle areas. So they will have to be properly. People will have to be properly. These inhabited areas will have to be properly protected, and the area domination has to be done.
You know, the government has said there's been a 70% drop in terrorism. That's what the government has said in January 2024. With the escalation in the situation, do you see this as a fact? Or since the January 2024 statement to say now in August 2024, you already see a change in scenario?
Yes, see, what government said is absolutely correct, but the spot you saw in Jammu region is probably, if you recall, that the day Honorable Prime Minister was swearing in, swearing in,
Correct.
oath taking with his
An
cabinet.
hour before that.
And just that time, look at the timing. those yatris of Shiv Khodi were attacked in the bus, in which 11 yatris were killed and many of them were injured. I think immediately after that, a lot of incidents happened, whether it is Kathua, Udhampur, Doda. We have lost a lot of army people and certain civilians. I think that spurt actually indicates we need to have extra precaution. But as I mentioned, we had conducted elections even in the worst times of 95, 96,
Right.
and 2002.
Absolutely. Aris Patania, voting next and voting now and statehood next?
You see, Jammu and Kashmir was a state, and Jammu and Kashmir shall remain a very, very embellished and a very, very special too. Special with regard to the Bharat Sarkar's affection, with regard to Bharat Sarkar's
Did you say Jammu and
support,
Kashmir
with
was
regard
a
to Bharat
state and
Sarkar's
Jammu and
initiative.
Kashmir will remain very special? I don't get what that means though.
My respectful submission, with regard to certain circumstances, certain situations, with a view to greater control over the state of affairs in Jammu and Kashmir, and this greater control has virtually yielded results also. So, as a resident of Jammu and Kashmir, I also felt offended why it has been downgraded to a union territory, but ultimately at the end of the day, it has yielded results, and I'm hopeful at an appropriate stage, at an appropriate period of time. And I think that time is also not far off. Jammu and Kashmir shall become a state. Ultimately, the fruits will percolate up to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I said what I said, it will be a special state with regard to Bharat Sarkar's support, with regard to Bharat Sarkar's affection, with regard to Bharat Sarkar's harbinger, Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat, and Insaniyat also. Jammu and
So
Kashmir is at a
special
defining
state
moment.
के लिए तो पहले state बनना पड़ेगा ना? Once the
will
voting
become a
happens,
state.
then what's stopping
I'm
us? If the government
it
is
will-
there, if people's mandate is there for people, if the government is formed, then what is the problem in statehood? Is what the opposition is asking.
Neha, by virtue
And the
of
people,
a
of course.
by virtue of a law passed by the Indian Parliament, Jammu and Kashmir has been converted into union territory. I think the Union Parliament, in particular the Union Government, shall take a call at an appropriate time, and that appropriate time is also not far off. Jammu and Kashmir shall become a state. It is the commitment of Bharat Sarkar made on the floor of the Parliament also. This is one part. Second part is that
Zishan Rana,
Jammu and
how do you
Kashmir,
respond to that?
we expect Jammu and Kashmir shall have a historic voter turnout, and ultimately Bharatiya Janata Party will come in flying colors. Bharatiya Janata will form the Sarkar in Jammu and Kashmir, and above all, Bharatiya Janata Party shall have its own chief minister in Jammu and Kashmir. This is what I want to stop it. Please, Sneha.
No, I mean, I'm with you when you hope for a historic turnout. Sure, the results let people decide, but Zishan Rana.
I would say that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have already decided that they will go with the party which has always stood with them, and it's none other than the Jammu and Kashmir National Conference. Because
No, but do
in the
you
last
believe
parliamentary
statehood
elections
could be?
also,
Do you believe voting is a step closer to the statehood? Do you believe that?
No, I see. First of all, I would say that Mr. Patania is forgetting that Jammu and Kashmir was once was one of the most powerful state in the country, and they downgraded it to a union territory, and that to a second-class union territory. And now they are taking credit for everything. They could not hold elections for 6 years, and now even after Supreme Court's verdict, they are trying to take credit for it. But people ultimately the fate of BJP will have to be decided by the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and I think that
Zishan
it has
sir,
already been
Zishan sir,
decided.
with due respect, with due respect, with due respect, sir, it is due to the conditions. It is due to the conditions and situations which have aggravated in Jammu and Kashmir. Due to your misrule, due to your misgovernance, that situation has to be taken under the
Okay, all
direct
right,
control of the
Patania,
Bharat
Mr.
Sarkar.
Patania, let Zishan Rana finish. Let Zishan Rana finish. Mr. Patania, I allowed you your time.
Please.
Let Zishan Rana finish, please.
Please.
Let me finish.
Please.
I said that they could not field candidates in Kashmir Valley in 3 parliamentary constituencies. They had absolutely no candidate. And now how can they say that they are going to form the government when you don't have candidate to face the people, the voters, the electorates? How can you say that you are going to form the government?
Okay, very quickly, SP Vaid, just to put context, there seems to be a lot of political row around transfers of various officials. Isn't that something that would usually be normal protocol? They are saying that how did these transfers happen a day before the dates were announced, a day or two before the dates were announced? Would that be normal protocol?
Sneha, there are instructions from the Election Commission of India that those officers who have completed 3 years plus in a district, they need to be removed. Also, those who belong to that district need to be removed. So I think some of the directions must have been followed, but Election Commission can examine the transfers. Those who do not fall in their guidelines can be reverted back, but it is, I think, not a very big issue. It should not be a big issue.
Zishan Rana, not a very big issue, and it's protocol.
No, I say that the guidelines issued by the Election Commission have not been followed properly, because even in my district, the 2 senior officers have been transferred and they have just completed. District magistrate completed 1 year and SSP Poonch completed 6 months. So I don't think so that the guidelines issued by Election Commission were followed properly. It has to be re-examined. We request the Election Commission to have a look and
please.
take notice of this.
I don't represent the LG Sarkar here on board, but as Vaid Sahab has pointed out, there was a detailed instruction to Jammu and Kashmir government, and hopefully and believably, in the pursuit of and in the proposed implementation of these instructions, these transfers might have been effected, and they might have been in the interest of administration also. There were some officers who were posted in local
But
districts.
he's saying, there have been exceptions where people have served only 1 year, 6 months, and they've also been transferred.
Might have been some material on record. I cannot speak on behalf of the LG Sarkar. I don't have material with me. So what material was on record before for effecting these transfers? I think national conference is given to the habit of picking up holes, creating mountains out of molehills, and trying to create issues out of non-issues. This will not settle. They will have to talk with the people, for the people, and by the people.
I think we're very short on time. I just want to... I think one thing is imperative, and one thing that I would like, I think everybody would be looking at and rooting for is people choosing ballot over bullet, and Jammu and Kashmir will shine with its record. Hopefully, it's closer, a step closer, or the finale towards statehood, and that's what people on the ground would love the most. Thank you very much to our panelists for joining us, Aris Patania, Zishan Rana, and SP Vaid. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you the latest.
Dadu,
Yes?
what does premium mean?
Beta, premium you can say is like